Welcome back to the DL Jones Book Show. I'm your host, DL Jones. On this episode, I want to talk about a little TV show by the name of Snowfall. Tonight they will be showing the season finale tonight of, I think it's season 4 that's going on, and I can't wait to watch it. But this is a show that I haven't heard too many people talk about, and it's a good show. So after the intro, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this show and why I like the show. So listen to this music real quick and we'll get right in on that. All right, Snowfall. Now, when it comes to these type of shows, and when I say these type of shows, I'm talking about several of these types of shows came out around the same time. Shows that pretty much starring, a most all black cast or a mostly black cast. The ones that came out around the same time, probably the one you most know about was the TV show Empire. And then you had 50 Cent show Power, that came out around the same time. But then there was another little small show that came out. It was on FX, and it goes by the name of Snowfall. And that's the show I'm talking about today. Now, this show, I kind of feel like out of the three, Empire was the show that I didn't stick with long. I kind of started on the first season, but quickly dropped it after a while. Power, I love that show. I've watched everything. I've watched the spinoff show, Power Book 2 or Power Book 2 Ghost or whatever it is. Confusing their naming convention for that series and the series spinoff. But Snowfall is a show that I think is a really good show. I've been watching it ever since it came out. I don't even know how I heard about it because I don't remember seeing commercials or anything. I just saw it on TV one day, just happened to catch the first episode, and I've been watching it ever since, and it's on FX. But yeah, let me get a little bit into Snowfall. Let me tell you what this show is about, and I'll tell you why I like it. But first, let me show you this real quick. Got my new t-shirts in. If you like these t-shirts, you want to help out the channel, you want to get one for yourself, got a link in the show notes. Go ahead and check that out. I got a couple of other things with the logo, mugs and t-shirts and hats, same thing like the hat here. I just really got them made up for myself because I like wearing my own stuff. But, figured if somebody else might be interested in them, because actually the hat is actually pretty cool. You might want to, grab a hat or a t-shirt yourself. I got a link in the show notes if you want to grab them. Make sure you check them out. But Snowfall is a series. It takes place in the 80s. I want to say 83 was when it started. It's in its 4th season right now, and it's sort of like a crime drama. And it's not based on a true story, but it's kind of based on kind of events that people believe to have happened back in the 80s with the crack epidemic and all of that kind of stuff. But the characters are all made up, and the actual story itself is all made up. It's just based on like a time frame and like little speculation of what people thought was going on back then. But the way it starts off is you have the main character who is Franklin Saint. Now, Franklin Saint, when the show starts off, he's a high school student. He's real smart, real clever. And he goes to try to make a little money, and somehow he gets to where he starts selling drugs. He gets mixed up with like some kind of drug dealer, some foreign guy. I can't remember his name or whatever, but he gets mixed up with that guy, and it's like I said, it takes place in the 80s, and I want to believe they're in Watts or Compton. They're somewhere in LA, in California. So it got kind of like that whole vibe from the 80s, like you used to see in movies like Colors and Boys in the Hood, and those movies of that time frame that took place in that time frame. It got kind of that vibe, which is kind of funny because it's funny now, when you watch a movie, I keep trying to see if they're going to slip up and have a cell phone in it, because, cell phones didn't exist back then. But I haven't found any situations like that yet. But anyway, Franklin Saint, he's just a high school student. He's really smart. He kind of keeps to himself, kind of like not like a talkative person or whatever, but he's really smart. So he figured he can make some money, doing something for this drug dealer that he somehow found out about. And he starts working for this drug dealer, and he starts making money selling drugs, in the neighborhood and stuff like that, Somehow that turned into him running into it's like a second part of the story where you have this CIA agent, and he's one of these people that, you've always heard that this happened back in the day where the CIA kind of worked with not so honest people where they kind of made money doing things that weren't quite illegal to fund like countries and stuff that were at war, to send them weapons and stuff like that so that they can win the war, because it would be in the U.S. best interest for that country to win the war. And this particular CIA agent, he was selling drugs, so he can make money to purchase guns for this one country that he was trying to, support, on behalf of the U.S. It's kind of all undercover stuff. So he kind of runs across, he catches the eye of Franklin Saint. He notices Franklin is a really smart kid, and he, already started in his drug dealing business, and he's doing pretty well. So he kind of noticed this guy. So what he does is that he takes the drugs that he gets and he sells it to Franklin for an unbelievably low price. And that way what happens is Franklin Saint is able to start his whole drug empire and just grow it. Franklin learned how to make crack cocaine, which brings his cost down even more. And the whole series is just basically it's like two parts of the series, but the main part is basically about Franklin navigating this minefield of a drug empire that he created from scratch. He got his uncle in on it, he got a whole crew and everything. And eventually, after it goes on, he's taking over the whole, town for the most part. He's like supplying all the drug dealers in the whole town, But it's really interesting just to find out, just to see him build that business. Even though the business is like a drug dealing business, he's becoming a kingpin. But it's really interesting just to see this guy, which is just your typical smart high school kid, basically start a drug empire, and just to watch him navigate his way through it. Watch him get in and out of trouble, watch him figure out how to, build all these relationships with other drug dealers and bring them in under his, whatever, where he's their supplier, he's the plug for them and everything. And on the side, the other part of the storyline is it also follows the CIA agent and follows all of the stuff that he's dealing with, because he got a lot of stuff going on too. He basically loses everything he loved. His wife, he loses access to his kids, everything that he loved, he kind of loses trying to be good at this job, trying to be a good CIA agent, trying to be the legal but not quite legal drug dealer to support whatever country it is that the US is trying to support back then. But yeah, it just follows it's like a whole rise and fall series. It's in season 4 now, and like the last episode comes on the night of season 4. But yeah, it's really good. I've been hooked on this show ever since it come out. And it's funny because when I compare it to the other two shows, which I would say is similar type of shows somewhat, but they all started around the same time. If you look at Empire to me was like, I couldn't keep interest in that show that often. It wasn't like, when I look at shows like this, like the drama type shows about being life in the streets and with the black experience and all of that kind of stuff, Empire kind of didn't keep my attention for long. It did at first, but I kind of fell off pretty quick. I don't think I made it past the first season. I think when the second season started, it had already completely lost my attention, and I didn't watch it anymore. Power was a little bit different. Power took itself a little bit more seriously. It was a little less, I wouldn't say, I want to say it was a little more believable, but it really wasn't, but it was more grounded, I guess that's the word I could say. It was more grounded than Empire. And the characters I thought were more likable. And I think that show just told a better story. I think the way the story unfolded on Power, I think they just did a better job on that. But when you go to Snowfall, and you got Franklin Saint, and you got his crew, and it's on a different level as far as telling the story. You know what I'm saying? It caught my attention in the same way as watching something like The Godfather. I'm not saying it's that good, but it's along those lines as far as the storytelling. It gives you that feel of you watching somebody taking something from nothing and building it, and you're there with that person. Seeing how that person deal with different obstacles that come up, and it's unbelievable how the stuff he's gone through. And then when you think about it, it's just it starts off where it's just a teenager, but like every other show, around the third season, I kind of feel like maybe that was the end of it. I kind of feel like something happened. I want to say in the second or third season that I felt like should have been the end of the series. It would have been a good stopping point for the series, and it wasn't. They continued on, and they kind of fought through, I want to say, about half a series, half a season, and the beginning of the 4th season. They still were kind of fighting through it, but then they eventually got back on track and made the show interesting again, and I'm back all in. So every show have those moments. Every show have that moment where you start watching the show and it hooks you and you're hooked, and then that thing that hooks you, that storyline for that part that hooks you, kind of ends and they move on to the next part, and that's where it gets tough for almost every show. And sometimes shows knock it out the park and they just move on, and sometimes shows kind of stumble a little bit and they may get their footing back and bring you back in. And that's what this show did. Kind of stumbled for me a little bit, but it brought itself back in. I'm back in on the show, but it's a pretty good show. The acting is good, the story is good, and I'm trying not to tell you too much because I want you to see it for yourself. All I'm saying is that it is a good show. It's a good show, and I'm just surprised not as many people are talking about it, because I feel like it's every bit as good as Power, if not better. But you hear a lot more people talk about Power than you do Snowfall. So yeah, I just want to talk about that show. The last episode, the season finale for season 4, comes on in like probably 2 hours. I'm going to watch it. But I just wanted to get up here and talk about it quick before I watch that show. I've been wanting to make a video about this show for a while. I just wanted to say a few words about it. And I wanted to put it on your radar in case it's something that you haven't seen. Now, it comes on FX. If you haven't seen the show, you never heard of the show, it's on Hulu. You can watch all the seasons on Hulu, or I'll put a link down below where it's on Amazon Prime. You have to rent it though. It's not just on the Prime service, but I'll put a link down in the bottom. You can check that link out. You can rent it if you want to watch it, or you can just read about it and then go to Hulu and watch it. But either way, the show is Snowfall. It's good. It's like an urban drama. It's a period show. It takes place in the 80s. And it's like in the crack epidemic. It's during that time when the rise of crack, and it takes place in LA and all of that kind of stuff. But it's a good show. You should check it out. And that's Snowfall. It's one other thing that made this show that's really interesting is that it was created by the late John Singleton. It's one of his shows. It's his creation. So that alone, if you look at John Singleton, his work. He did Boys in the Hood. So his work. His work is all kind of like in that mindset, in that mind frame. So check it out, Snowfall. I got a link in the show in the description where you can check it out, read the description, rent it, or go to Hulu and watch it. But check it out, and start from season 1 and watch it all the way through. It's worth it, and it's a good show. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. While you're here, why don't you check out that video right there? Or maybe that one right there. And while you're at it, go ahead and click that little picture of my image there and subscribe to my channel.